My name is Aisel Kipruto and I lead communications at ESSA. So welcome to this webinar. This webinar is titled Advancing Foundational Learning Through African Research Perspectives. And we are really excited that in this conversation, we have education researchers from Africa, we have policymakers, we have practitioners, and we are looking forward to a great conversation because all of us are, we truly care about foundational learning. So this webinar is brought to you by REAL Centre, by ESSA, by Gates Foundation, and GPE Kicks, as you can see on this poster. We would love to share a few housekeeping rules. First of all, we are recording this webinar so that we can share with others who wanted to attend but didn't get time. We would love to know where you are joining from, so please share your name and also your country on chat box. We would love if you can share this webinar on your social media platform so that we can have more visibility. And even if you can share your reflections thereafter, that would be much appreciated. This webinar is in English and French, so just look at the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and select your preferred language. And we will appreciate if you can stick to that preferred language throughout this conversation. So we are very delighted and we are looking forward to a great conversation. I'll now hand over to my colleague Badara to take us to the next step. Thank you. Welcome, Badara.
Thank you, Aisel. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I am Badara Sar, the Director of Policy and Impact at ESSA. So it is really my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar. The topics of this webinar is has already been mentioned by Adel, but we will have presentation focusing on language of instruction in early grades in a multilingual context. And as you know, this is absolutely a topic that is, sorry for the repetition, but I'm going to say a topic that is topical, that is important for policymakers, for practitioners in the classrooms. So we would be very grateful to hear from you and to get your insights, and also to see together how we can, share that with policymakers. Because indeed, the choice of language in early grades in a multilingual context is not an easy task. It can be problematic. So it has to be based on evidence. It has to have the buy-in of the community so that the government is really at ease. So this is very important for us, for ESSA, and this webinar will really shed light on that. But at the same time, it's not only here bridging a research gap or knowledge gap. It is also about connecting, creating opportunities for our grantees, for our policymakers to be together in a venue, in an environment where they can talk to each other and where they can have really solid ties, solid links that will take us to the next level. Because that's also what ESSA is about. ESSA and REAL Centre are really working together with the help of GPA Cakes and the Gates Foundation to create that network between our researchers, for the benefit of education in early grades, in foundational learning. So without further ado, I'm going to thank Izzy from the Gates Foundation for joining, and then I will give her the floor, either with your permission. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Badara, and thank you, ESSA colleagues and the REAL Centre for inviting me to say a few very brief remarks today before we get into the real business of the webinar. So just to say that the global education team at the Gates Foundation is really focused on this issue of improving foundational literacy and numeracy, and particularly through evidence-based solutions that work in government systems. So this partnership with ESSA and the REAL Centre is really crucial, because we know that this stronger bridge is needed between the African-led foundational learning research that really is grounded in the questions surfaced by policymakers and practitioners and are working to improve classroom outcomes. So I really love that the questions that are being explored today came out of these very, thoughtful connections between policymakers, implementers, and researchers at the country level. And so it's really exciting to see some of this research taking shape, and I know there'll be a really exciting conversation today. So I'm just pleased to be able to learn more about what you have in store, and to celebrate the kind of work that has come from a lot of deep thinking from both ESSA and from the researchers who are here today. So thank you so much, and looking forward to hearing more.
Thank you, Izzy. Now I'll turn the floor to the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you, Badara. I'll hand over now to my colleague, Dr. Dominic Okulo, who will give us an introduction to the webinar.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining. It's really a great pleasure to have you all join us again for this webinar, which, as the people spoken before me has indicated, we are focusing on the language of instruction in early grades in multilingual context. So I'll just give a brief background of where we come from in terms of the of this topic. Is that we did a bit of convenings in the different countries, and one of the cross-cutting issues that we did get is the issue of language of instruction, especially bearing in mind that in African context, we have children growing in the multilingual context, speaking 2 or 3 languages from that early grade. Therefore, key questions that emerge from the policymakers, practitioners, and even researchers themselves is which language in particular are these learners supposed to be instructed in? So there are a lot of research out there that speak into different languages that need to be used. But we just want to really see how do we contextualize this within our own context, so within our own countries. So we have presenters across different countries from Kenya, Senegal, Zambia, and Ghana, just to try and share on this topic of language. Our aim is to try and understand what is the policy environment around in these countries on this issue of language of instruction, and how do they compare across countries. So I would like to call us, as we listen, to be keen to see, are there things that are cross-cutting between the countries, or are there things that are markedly different between the countries where we'll get to these presentations. We'll also listen a bit from the presenters on their own research, because most of their research is focused around the issue of language of instruction, or language in the early grade context. We want to hear from them, or what are their what is their research? What are they finding out from their research, or what are they aiming to find out from their research, depending on where the stage of where their research is. So as was indicated, the main objective is that we are also looking at strengthening the community of researchers in Africa around the foundational learning. So bringing us together and deepening some of these discussions, creating an avenue for these discussions across these countries is one of the aims that we have for this webinar. So we ask that we engage around with questions and reflections after the presentation, so that we can be able to enrich this environment, so that even the researchers that are presenting, as they move ahead with their research, then they can also contemplate around the questions that we will raise, or the issues that will be raised in this forum. We also aim to strengthen the relationship between the researchers, policymakers, and practitioners. And so as you ask the questions, it would be good to also understand from what perspective are you a researcher, are you a practitioner, or are you a policymaker, so that we can be able to really get these perspectives together and strengthen the issue of language around in these countries. So we do hope that there will be really increased engagement around researchers, even beyond this webinar, to be able to continue this conversation forward, and there will be a lot of knowledge sharing. So if you can be able to share a bit of knowledge that you get from this from this webinar through the different social media platforms or through blogs, that will really be great. So I do really take again this opportunity to welcome you, and also to ask you to be keen enough to be able to tease out what is coming, so that we can delve into this issue of language of instruction in early grade within the time that we have in the webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dominic. So like my colleague mentioned, we will have the presentations now. We'll have 4 presentations, 15 minutes per presenter. So we'll have a presentation from Ghana, from Kenya, from Senegal, and from Zambia. So we will start off with the presentation from Ghana, which will be given by Dr. Roger Ayinselya. And just a bit about Dr. Ayinselya. He's a lecturer in teacher education at the University of Cape Coast, Ghana, and he holds a PhD in education from Canterbury Christchurch University and has over a decade of experience in education and research. His work focuses on teacher professional development, policy, and curriculum implementation in Ghana and beyond. So as I said, we'll have 15 minutes per presenter, and then we'll have some questions after. So I will hand over now to Dr. Roger Ayinselya for the first presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning to you all from Ghana. It is morning here. And once again, thank you, ESSA and REAL, for the opportunity to share my work with other colleagues and insights into the context of Ghana. So, as we're given the topic, language of instruction, and so in terms of my outline, I'll be looking at the role of language in early literacy development. And we all know the importance of literacy development in a child's success in other areas of learning. Look at the context of multilingualism and foundational learning, language of instruction policy in Ghana, about our research, which is what we are looking at currently, and a reflection on the implication. I use reflection because this is a research that still being conducted, and so we can only reflect on the outcome, the expected outcomes. All right. Okay, so I know most of us here, if not all of us, we agree and we know the importance of language. It is central, it is key when it comes to children's comprehension and their participation in learning. If communication doesn't take place, no learning will take place. And communication comes from language. How is the language used? How is the language that is being used being understood by others, and in this case, children? And so we all know that language is important. However, what that means is that for effective learning to take place, there's the possibility, or there's the need for the alignment between what the child is introduced to at the early stage of his or her life, which is the home language, and what is happening in the school environment. And this is important in particular in sub-Saharan Africa, because if we look at it, which I will be talking a bit later in the subsequent slides, we are diverse when it comes to language, ethnicity, and so many. So children speak one language at home, and when they get into school, it's a different language. And so we know that for effective learning to then take place, there must be alignment between these two languages, 2 or more. Even in some cases, children even speak 2 or more languages in their homes. And so what that means, that foundational learning, children to have a solid foundation in terms of their learning for future success, and it requires that, in fact, children are also given a solid foundation. And that is why literacy and early reading, which is what we are looking at, is important. And so the message here is that language matters when it comes to foundational learning success in relation to children. Okay, and I touch on this briefly, which is the multilingual context of sub-Saharan Africa. And in fact, as I read through the literature, in most sub-Saharan Africa countries, we have so many ethnic groups with different languages. And so what that means, that these children are born into a home that a different language is spoken, and he or she is sent into school. And depending on our colonial masters, again, we're also aware that most sub-Saharan African countries adopt the language of our colonial masters. in Ghana, for instance, and other sub-Saharan Africa countries, English, and we have French. And so this is what is being emphasized or being taught in schools. And again, we understand the importance of English language and French, for instance, because they are more or less like international language. And so we are compelled to make these languages not only a national language, but also a language of instruction in our schools. And so children will typically go into school speaking their home language, and this is different from the school language. Yet, when it comes to assessment, the language which is the L to the English language or French or whichever language, they are assessing it. So we are going to look at it, how is that if there's no alignment between what they are introduced to in the early part of their lives and what is being taught in school by way of language of instruction, what is likely to be the impact, which again, as I said, we are going to look at in our research. And so what that means is that language mismatch, when it comes to language, when there's a mismatch between what the child is born into and introduced to and what is being taught in school, then it kind of creates some obstacle, challenges to a child's literacy development. And so the summary of this, as I put it as my key message, is that language again matters for foundational learning, for children's future success in their learning. Now, it is important that having looked at the context of sub-Saharan Africa, we come to Ghana. Again, as I indicated, Ghana is not isolated when it comes to multilingualism. In fact, in Ghana, as we speak, we have over 80 languages coming from different ethnic groups. And these languages, if you come to, in terms of teacher education, all right, only, it just about now it's increasing. It started with 9 languages. Now other languages are coming to make it 10, 11, but 9 languages are what are taught in our teacher education institution. So you ask yourself, how about the over 70 languages that are not being taught in our teacher education institutions? So where are the teachers to fill in those schools? Yet the language policy is that from kindergarten to primary 3, we call what we call blended language. So we have the mother tongue and English language being taught. So the teacher is allowed to use sometimes the mother tongue to maybe explain, elaborate, make his or her teaching explicit if the children do not really understand the English language. However, from primary 4, then we transition to only English language. So the question, and that is the concern in my country, there are some communities, there are some schools where their languages are not being taught in the teacher education institution. And so teachers are posted to these schools without any background knowledge in their mother tongue. So the question is, how do they teach these children? Particularly if you are posted to between the kindergarten and the primary 3, if you are posted to any of these classrooms, how do you go about your teaching? Your guess is as good as mine. And so this in particular is the urban areas, because in Ghana, for instance, there's a lot of migration. If you come to the rural areas, mostly it's one language because it's one community. But where we are talking of the urban area, which is cosmopolitan in nature, people migrate from different ethnic groups to the urban areas. This is the challenge. So you can have a child living in a household where 2 or more local languages are spoken. And you know how children they try as much as possible to learn all these languages. And they go to school and they are introduced to English language. They go to school and even none of the languages that they speak at home is being taught in their school environment. So how do they learn? How do they transition into the learning process? And so that is the context of Ghana, all right? So yes, we acknowledge that local language is important. However, the implementation is what is a challenge. So the policy exists, however, it is a challenge. And the question I ask myself is, what then is the challenge? I've already touched on this, that the urban areas in particular, children speak one language at home and a different language is being taught in their school environment. What I mean is that, let me take an example. We have a language called Twi, okay? So you can have children who understand Ga or Guru in other languages, and when it comes to the school that they attend, Twi is taught. Meanwhile, maybe they are not familiar with the Twi. Okay, the Ga and the other language that they are familiar with are not taught in their schools, but they are forced to learn these languages in their schools. Again, I've already explained that not all the languages are taught in our teacher education institution. What that means is that we have majority of teachers who are not familiar with the mother tongue of the children, the local languages that are taught in the schools. So they are posted into the school. They themselves are now even initiating themselves into the community to even begin to learn the language. So how do they then teach if you are not even beginning to learn the language on your own? So proficiency here becomes a challenge. And while they themselves are not, I've already talked of the children, then the teacher too is part. All right. So what that means is, again, we know if a child doesn't feel confident that he can express himself in the mother tongue or that the language that is taught in the school, it affects participation. And this happens in the classroom. We go for teaching practice observation. As I said, I'm a teacher educator. And you can see when you ask the question, it is all because they are not able to participate because they do not understand the language that is taught in that school. All right. So it reduces participation. And there is evidence to this effect with the report by the Ghana Education Fact 2020 saying that there's low reading, and this can be attributed to the language issue I've just talked about. As low as only 7% of primary 3 children meeting expected reading standards. And so this is what happens. And so this brings into question our research. How does homeschool language and alignment then influence reading outcomes? And so this is what we then seek to explore, which is the homeschool language alignment, and then in this context, the multilingualism and reading skills among primary 3 children in Ghana. This is our research. So what is this research all about? By way of a summary, okay, so it is, as I explained, to explore the relationship between the mother tongue and the home language. Some call it mother tongue, others to the home language. All right, that is using multiple languages in the home and how that is affecting children reading in schools. In fact, sometimes you go for this purpose when the children are reading in an attempt to even read in the English language, they chip in their own language here and there. Sometimes it's interesting. So they struggle a bit, especially when they are not really familiar with the language that is being taught in the school. They struggle a bit. So this is our aim. We want to look at this, explore this relationship. So we are looking at primary 3. We are looking at primary 3 people because that is the transition, as I explained earlier, in Ghana from KG to primary 3 is mother tongue and English language. But from primary 4, it is only English. So the transition point is class 3. All right. So these children want to look at how over the period of kindergarten, 2 years of kindergarten and the primary 3, how is it affecting their reading skills? And we know we can then make recommendation in terms of what the transition from class 4. All right. And so in doing so, we'll also be interviewing some teachers. All right. To also, of course, they deal with these learners every day, the challenges they also face in relation to handling these learners. And we chose the Greater Accra. Greater Accra is the capital, the region, Greater Accra region, the capital is Accra. We chose it because I've already mentioned that urban areas in particular is a challenge. And so Accra is cosmopolitan, different ethnic groups, different languages that children are exposed to. And so that is why we are concentrating on that. And so we'll collect a survey.
Sorry to cut you off. You have 5 more minutes.
Okay, so I'll be done soon. Thank you. So we'll be collecting both quantitative and qualitative data. In terms of the quantitative data, we are all familiar, or some of us are familiar with EGRA assessment tool. That's early grade reading assessment, okay, which looks at, in terms of children, the ability to letter sound, word recognition, their reading fluency, and after that, even comprehension. So we're using EGRA to collect. When it comes to the qualitative, as I said, we'll be interviewing the teachers to also. So in terms of analysis, we're using the explanatory sequential because, as I said, we are looking at the language alignment. So what is the association? Look at the association, the mother tongue, the English language. If the language that is being introduced at home, in the school environment, is the same as the child speaks in the school environment, that is being taught in the school environment, how is that affecting their literacy development? If it's a different language, again, however, the child comes to school, it's a different language that is being introduced. How is that also affecting? So we'll also be looking at those dynamics. Again, in terms of our sample, we're going to use random sampling to select 20, schools from the district, 4 schools. If I were looking at 4 districts in the Greater Accra region to focus, and we have carefully, as I said, in terms of our random sampling, we certify them such that at least we can meet all these dynamics in terms of the multilingualism of the language. And so for reading, we use EGRA and teacher listening. And so when it then comes to the quality, I've also indicated if I will be analyzing that thematically. So, of course, as I said, the reflection, what is the expected outcome of this? So we expect that, of course, this research is going to have some impact when it comes to policy and practice. Why? Because we believe that when it comes, whether the alignment is positive, it is not, whether it creates barriers, challenges to children comprehension, it will definitely inform policy and practice. In terms of teacher deployment, I've also recognized, because we're interviewing these teachers and taking their data, it will inform us, these teachers, do they have background in the language that is being taught in the school environment, or they are also posted and they themselves are also struggling to even learn the language themselves? All these dynamics will also inform teacher deployment, how they are posted. And of course, we hope that efforts will be taken to improve learners' literacy skills. And then resource development. Again, as I indicated, at the moment, only 9 languages. And as I said, others are coming to make 10, 11. But you can imagine, out of over 80 languages, okay? So when it comes to this, it's all about resources. We don't have the human resources. We don't have the immaterial resources. But if we come out with something that is of evidence, then we hope that policymakers and other stakeholders who matter will take this seriously and ensure that we amass the resources that we need to be able to ensure children learn and learn better. And so this is, in summary, the context of our work, and we hope that within the period of this project, we'll be able to accomplish that. Thank you, colleagues and seniors.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ain. So yeah, that was really, really interesting. Our next presenter is from Kenya, and we'll have Dr. Peter Kigwilu, and he's an assistant professor and director of quality assurance at United States International University, Africa. He holds a PhD in education and curriculum studies and instruction, and has extensive experience in educational quality assurance, assessment, and higher education systems across Africa. He also contributes to national and international initiatives, including work with examination councils and large-scale assessment programs. Welcome, Dr. Kigwilu.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm going to make a very brief presentation on the topic language of instruction in early grades in multilingual Kenya. And this is informed by the study that we are currently conducting. In terms of my presentation, I'm going to speak to 4 questions. What does the language of instruction policy say versus what actually happens in the classrooms? 2, how does policy address Kenyan multilingualism? 3, what languages undermine language of instruction policy implementation? And finally, how does research address early years language policy? So to start us off, just some background about Kenya's linguistic landscape. We do have about over 70 indigenous languages being spoken in the country. But out of these languages, the indigenous ones, one of them is an official language, Kiswahili, in addition to English. And Kenya is made up of 47 regions, which we call counties. And when you go to each of these counties, you'll find they have distinct linguistic profiles. The other thing I want to bring out on the onset is that for grade 1 to 3, the language of instruction is basically mother tongue as per policy. Now, I want to start looking at the first question, comparison of the policy and practice in language of instruction. The Kenya's policy framework is very clear about use of indigenous languages, and it begins with our own constitution that obliges the state to promote all the Kenyan languages. Then when we look at the basic education curriculum framework that guides foundational learning in Kenya, mother tongue is a language of instruction at grades 1 and 3. And then when learners get to grade 4, they begin learning English as the language of instruction. We still have other documents and policies. For example, the National Curriculum Policy reinforces that the language provisions, we need to ensure that we are using language of instruction at early grade being a mother tongue, and then as they transit to grade 4 and above, we shift to English as a language of instruction. So what is coming out in the policy framework in Kenya is that we have an early exit multilingual model, whereby we begin by emphasizing on mother tongue from grade 1 to 3, and then the learners transition into English as the language of instruction. Now, is this what is done in the classroom? The answer is no. While we want mother tongue to be the primary language of instruction in grades 1 and 3, especially in the rural regions, we find that there is a challenge in the urban centers because learners are coming from diverse languages, and therefore they cannot be taught in a particular mother tongue as the language of instruction. We end up therefore using English and Kiswahili in classroom instruction. Now, the other challenge we are having is that policy requires that where we have regions that have mixed languages or populations, they are ethnically mixed, we need to use Kiswahili. But now the question is, Kiswahili is an acquired language. Not every Kenyan in that urban area is mother tongue is Kiswahili. So already we are missing the point of mother tongue as the language of instruction. And in our urban areas, there is a lot of code switching. Children are brought up speaking Kiswahili, mixing with English, a language we call Sheng. And therefore you cannot really say the mother tongue in urban would be Kiswahili. Now, the other problem we are having is that whereas we say that there is formal transition to English at grade 4, when you look at most of the studies, they are showing that only 12% of our teachers consider mother tongue effective in teaching. So even at grade 1 to 3, we do have challenges that I'll be speaking to later on. Now, I also try to look at when we come to assessment of foundational learning, what is data telling us? And there are very interesting findings so far. For example, 41 out of 100 grade 4 learners, this is a study that was conducted in 2023, it found that 41 out of 100 grade 4 learners were able to read English of grade 3, where we would be expecting that all of them should be able to read because they had already acquired the language. But even more interesting in terms of regions, when 50% of learners in urban centers were actually able to read, only 34% from the rural areas were able to read the same. Another finding that is interesting in Kenya is that 42% of class 3 students, this is for mathematics, but we have a correlation between performance in mathematics and English. So if you perform well in language, chances are that you'll also be able to perform well in language, in English, in mathematics. The other finding is that 53% of class 3 students were able to pass the English threshold. And this has been a trend since 2021, meaning that the pass rate is still very low. So there still exists a number of assessment tensions. In Kenya, when we use our Kenya Early Years assessment measures, we only use English to test the learners. We never test them in their mother tongue. Yet we are saying that mother tongue should be the language of instruction from grade 1 to grade 3. When you look at national assessments, they're all done in English. So we are already leaving out the native language in terms of assessing our learners. And then the other thing that is coming out, we have a very sharp rural, urban, regional, and gender divide when you look at students' performance in language reading. Now, question 2 is how is Kenya addressing the challenge of multilingualism? As I had said, our constitution already underpins the promotion of all languages. The other thing that the country has done is to ensure that in regions where they don't have one common language, like urban settings, we use the language of that catchment area. So the teacher will identify this catchment area, the popular language is this, and that would be the language that would be used for instruction. For urban areas, we require that we use Kiswahili, which is the official language, as medium of instruction. When we find that the enrollment in the region is ethnically mixed. And then the other thing, a policy issue we are looking at is the early exit model, the immersion of learners in the mother tongue in grade 1 to 3, then they transition into English at grade 4. So these are some of the issues that we are looking at. Now, in terms of the gaps, if we look at multilingualism in Kenya, there are a number of gaps that we need to address. And these are the gaps that I'm going to articulate better in the next presentations because they're the ones that are informing the study that we are going to undertake. So I will move on to the next part.
Dr. Kigwilu, sorry, you have 5 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. Now, what are the implementation challenges? Literature that I've gone through is pointing out a number of issues. One, in terms of training teachers, we don't train them in mother tongue. And even for those that we have trained them, we don't post them to the areas where their language, their mother tongue is used. So you are sending him to a place where the language of instruction is different from his or her native language, and therefore this teacher cannot communicate in that mother tongue at grade 1 to 3. 2, we have shortage of teaching and learning materials. We've not developed materials for the various native languages that are spoken in Kenya, and that becomes a limitation. We also have the challenge around community and parental resistance. One interesting study that was conducted in Kenya showed that, for instance, whereas parents insist that their learners should be taught in English because of better outcomes, educational outcomes, 45% of the parents were not able to read English at grade 2 when they were subjected to that test. So we do have a number of challenges, including equity and socio-economic barriers, and then political retreat on some of the policies. The most recent one being that in 2024, we were politically, we moved again from learners being exposed to 5 lessons a week in mother tongue, they were reduced to 3. So that is a challenge that we are facing from the political side of it. Now, there are a number of studies that have been able to look at. They point to the various issues around language of instruction in Kenya. I may not be able to go through all of them, but when you look at them, you do find that Kenya as a country, we are still struggling in terms of how do we implement a mother tongue in foundational learning. They cut across resources, they cut across attitudes, and they cut across the pedagogical skills that we prepare our teachers and to be able to effectively teach in the language of instruction. Now, I'd like to maybe just mention on this study. It is one of latest studies that has been conducted for a period 2021 to 2024. And there are very interesting findings about it. One is learners read best in languages they know. So if we don't subject our learners to the native language, we teach them in English at grade 1 to 3, they're likely not to perform very well. The other finding that was there is that if we adopt the bilingual model, we teach a first language and second language concurrently, learners may perform much better than the early exit immersion model that Kenya is currently using. Then the issue of resources and finally a political will is very important when it comes to promoting mother tongue in early grade learning. This just some of the studies that I've been able to look at. I would that we skip this and then I maybe conclude on the last slide. Now, when I looked at the literature for this study, these are the 5 areas that are coming out strongly. One, we have the policy practice divergency is still very persistent. What we say is not what we do. 2, evidence is favoring a mother tongue based to multilingual education approach. 3, the issue around pedagogy, like in Kenya, is basically taught in English and Kiswahili for foundational learning. Then 3, assessment systems that are used do not capture first language literacy outcomes. We are only testing in English. And finally, the many changes that are happening in our basic education curriculum framework, we are actually going backwards in terms of implementing a mother tongue for early grade learners. Maybe as I summarize, I just want to mention that we are not yet at the stage of data collection for my study. We will be collecting data as schools open in May, but our study is based on the gaps that have been addressed in this literature review, and we are conducting a mixed methods study in one of the counties in Kenya, and we are targeting learners, grade 3 learners, we are targeting teachers, head teachers, and education support officers in the county. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kigwilu. A very, very interesting presentation again. Our next presenter is Dr. So from Senegal, and he's a senior lecturer and researcher at Université Iba der Thiam de Thiès with a PhD in language sciences. His work focuses on French linguistics and sociolinguistic practices in Senegal, particularly the interplay between French and Wolof and its implications for language use and education. Bienvenue, Dr. So.
Voilà, merci beaucoup, chers collègues. Voilà, je suis très honoré de participer à ce panel. Donc, je me présente, je suis donc Dr Papa Limso, enseignant-chercheur en sciences du langage. J'interviens à l'Université Iba der Thiam de Thiès. Donc, aujourd'hui, donc, je vous parle de la langue d'enseignement dans les premières années du primaire dans des contextes multilingues, donc c'est en particulier le contexte sénégalais. Pour commencer, donc, je me permets de faire un petit rappel par rapport aux politiques linguistiques et surtout aux pratiques que nous rencontrons dans les écoles sénégalaises. Le cadre juridique et constitutionnel existe et à cet effet, la langue officielle de la République du Sénégal est le français. Les langues nationales sont le Diola, le Malinké, le Pulaar, le Serer, le Soninké, le Wolof et toute autre langue nationale qui sera codifiée. Donc, je vous cite ici la loi 2001-03 du 22 janvier 2001 portant constitution. Donc là, elle a été légèrement modifiée. C'est juste pour introduire mon propos et vous dire que depuis plus de 2 décennies, l'État du Sénégal s'est résolument orienté vers un enseignement bilingue à l'école élémentaire et cela en particulier dès le début, dès les premiers pas, dès la première étape. Les enseignements donc durant ces premières années doivent se dérouler exclusivement dans la langue nationale du milieu, sachant que on va y arriver peut-être un peu plus loin. Euh, il existe quand même une bonne vingtaine de langues répertoriées, précisément 22 sur les 25, même si dans la réalité des faits, on a des langues et des dialectes qu'on quantifie à hauteur d'une quarantaine. Mais l'un dans l'autre, les enseignements doivent progressivement partir de la langue 1 vers la langue seconde, et cela durant le cycle élémentaire. Alors, l'état actuel des lieux laisse entrevoir une vision portée par le ministère de l'Éducation nationale. Je vais peut-être pas revenir sur l'approche historique parce qu'en fait, il faut le dire, hein, dans le programme d'amélioration de la qualité, de l'équité et de la transparence du secteur de l'éducation et de la formation, qu'on appelle le paquet, le gouvernement du Sénégal s'était engagé à assurer, avant l'année 2030, une éducation de base de qualité pour tous. Bon, ça, c'est vraiment dans les aspects politiques. Mais il faut dire que, pour être concret, le ministère s'est rendu compte qu'il y a eu quand même pas mal de lenteur. Et c'est dans ce cadre-là qu'il faut inscrire l'action du MOEPS. Et l'action du MOEPS, c'est le modèle harmonisé d'enseignement bilingue au Sénégal, qui est un cadre fédérateur des initiatives en matière d'utilisation des langues nationales au cycle primaire et au cycle préscolaire. Donc, l'année dernière, sur les 16 circonscriptions académiques, 13 ont effectivement introduit les langues nationales dans nos cycles préscolaires et primaires. Cependant, on note une résistance du français en milieu urbain notamment, et ça peut se comprendre. Nous avons également un déploiement disparate de l'enseignement bilingue, tout comme on remarque une insuffisance de support didactique, ainsi qu'un besoin en formation accrue des enseignants plutôt. Alors, un premier bilan d'étape nous a été proposé par... j'ai récupéré l'information sur le site de ARED. Je crois que l'information, vous-même, vous y avez accès parce que je partage le lien. Et à partir de là, on a un texte qui synthétise un tout petit peu ce bilan d'étape-là, puisque on y note qu'en développant des compétences fondamentales à la fois en Wolof et en français, les élèves apprennent à lire plus tôt, participent avec davantage de confiance et ont beaucoup plus de chances d'achever leur scolarité et à long terme d'améliorer leurs perspectives économiques. Alors, je partage tout à fait ce point de vue, hein, puisqu'en fait, ça ne doit pas être un bilan spécifique au contexte sénégalais, mais tous les contextes multilingues, tous les contextes bilingues quand même, doivent se retrouver dans cet état de fait, dans ce constat. Mais à cela, il faut ajouter que les élèves ont tendance à participer de manière beaucoup plus accrue lorsque les enseignements se font dans une langue qu'ils maîtrisent, une langue en tout cas qu'ils ont l'habitude d'utiliser, de parler dans le cercle familial. Le taux d'abandon et d'échec également a tendance à baisser. Et ça aussi, c'est un fait. Slide. Voilà, donc le deuxième point sur lequel l'attention doit être attirée, c'est sur les politiques d'enseignement linguistique en contexte multilingue. Il faut le dire, hein, je l'ai dit tout à l'heure dans mon propos liminaire, le Sénégal compte au total 22 langues codifiées sur les 25 répertoriées, mais ces langues-là cohabitent avec le français qui est la langue officielle et qui est reconnue comme telle. Il y a néanmoins, parmi les langues codifiées, les langues nationales, il y a une langue qui domine les transactions linguistiques. Je veux dire, le Wolof ici est considéré comme la langue la plus véhiculaire, puisqu'elle est parlée par une très forte proportion de la population. Là, je ne me suis pas amusé à faire un travail de recensement, je me suis basé sur les faits, et en réalité, c'est avéré. Le Wolof est la langue véhiculaire, la langue la plus parlée au Sénégal. Alors, ce multilinguisme-là, consacré par la Constitution, fait l'objet quand même d'un encadrement en milieu scolaire. Et là, on parle d'un multilinguisme fonctionnel et progressif qui est structuré au niveau de l'école élémentaire. Donc, j'ai fait un petit schéma, la L1, la L1 et la L2 associées, puis plus tard la L2. Donc ça, c'est un peu pour introduire l'aspect cartographique de la dimension linguistique, ou en tout cas l'aspect linguistique de cet état de fait. Donc l'orientation politique, comme on l'a dit tout à l'heure, vise un bilinguisme harmonieux, un bilinguisme qui est additif, qui passe de la L1, qui combine L1, L2 en deuxième étape et qui plutôt finalement va se terminer par l'usage quasi exclusif du français à partir de la troisième étape. Alors, euh, ainsi donc, le choix de la métalangue d'enseignement est fait sur la base d'une cartographie linguistique locale. On y reviendra peut-être à la fin de la présentation. Euh, et ça, c'est tout à fait naturel. La langue la plus parlée fera l'objet d'un choix, ou en tout cas sera choisie comme étant la langue d'enseignement, comme étant la métalangue d'enseignement. Alors, les communautés doivent être associées au choix de la langue dominante de scolarisation. Alors, le multilinguisme à l'école devient ainsi local uniquement. Et ça pose le problème de ce qu'on peut considérer comme des disparités au niveau national. Même si dans les projections, il est une réalité sociolinguistique, ce multilinguisme-là. Alors, l'innovation pédagogique consiste à faire des langues nationales donc, je disais que l'innovation pédagogique consiste à faire des langues nationales des médiums et objets d'enseignement, tout comme... Non, c'est bon, slide. Au niveau des défis à relever également, il y a ce qu'on appelle les poches de résistance du français. J'en avais parlé tout à l'heure dans mon propos liminaire. Et cela surtout en milieu urbain. Pour le moment, nous n'avons pas à disposition un document de politique nationale qui fixe la nouvelle orientation. Je crois que c'est à l'état de balbutiement. Euh, il y a également un déficit en termes de formation des acteurs. Le problème, je l'ai relevé également au tout début de mon propos. Les supports didactiques également manquent en milieu scolaire. Et les enseignants, parfois, sont affectés sans qu'on ne tienne compte de leur maîtrise de la méta-langue d'enseignement du milieu. Et ça, c'est un peu l'objet du travail de recherche que nous menons en ce moment sur la méta-langue d'enseignement, les effets de la méta-langue d'enseignement sur les enseignements-apprentissages en numératie au cours d'initiation. Donc, nous avons porté notre focus sur les locuteurs non natifs pour voir comment le fait d'intervenir dans un environnement ou dans une classe ou dans un environnement même socioculturel où la langue d'enseignement, la métalangue d'enseignement n'est pas la langue première de l'enseignant, quels effets cela peut impliquer sur la qualité des enseignements-apprentissages. Il y a également la réticence de certaines communautés et ça se comprend même si ça ne s'explique pas forcément. L'inverse également étant vrai. Certaines communautés pensent que leurs enfants ne doivent pas être inscrits à l'école pour aller apprendre leur langue ou bien la langue qu'ils ont l'habitude d'utiliser à la maison. Le problème donc de la pluralité dialectale également, j'en ai parlé tout à l'heure, et fait partie des défis à relever. Voilà, les enjeux de la politique linguistique donc dans nos travaux de recherche. Dans mes travaux de recherche, puisque je coordonne une équipe de recherche, les recherches portent sur l'impact que peut avoir la maîtrise ou non de la métalangue d'enseignement des mathématiques en classe de CI sur la performance des apprenants. Alors, nous avons ciblé la langue Wolof. Pourquoi? Parce que nous intervenons dans des zones prioritairement wolofophones. Donc, nous sommes donc au cœur du pays, donc dans la région de Diourbel, au centre, où la langue la plus utilisée, en tout cas dans les interactions, est le Wolof. Donc, les recherches traitent des enjeux liés à la politique linguistique à travers une approche plus ou moins didactique. Cette approche-là, donc, est centrée sur les conditions linguistiques réelles d'accès aux apprentissages fondamentaux. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut voir dans la réalité des pratiques comment l'utilisation d'une langue qui n'est pas propre à l'enseignant, comment cette utilisation-là peut impacter la qualité des enseignements apprentissage. Alors, les travaux donc cherchent à montrer que la simple utilisation d'une langue nationale en classe ne garantit pas la réussite des enseignements apprentissage si la métalangue disciplinaire n'est pas maîtrisée par le maître. Donc, c'est ce que j'ai relevé au niveau des défis, ce problème, ces derniers points, et qui me semble vraiment essentiel pour qu'on puisse au moins assurer une bonne interprétation des résultats sur le terrain. Parce que sans cela, je pense que il est quand même un peu compliqué, un peu difficile de pouvoir se projeter dans des analyses ou dans une forme j'allais dire, d'évaluation d'un dispositif qui, a priori, est voué à quelques difficultés. Donc, en gros, c'est, je pense, ce que je voulais partager avec vous et je reste donc à votre disposition pour d'éventuels éclairages. Donc, je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Dr. So. We have our last presenter, and that is Dr. Lubungu from Zambia, who will be presenting to us. And Dr. Lubungu is a lecturer in literature in English and research methods at Kwame Nkrumah University, where he also serves as assistant dean for postgraduate studies. With over a decade of experience in higher education, his work spans literature, education, and interdisciplinary research, including curriculum development and internationally funded projects across Africa and beyond. Welcome, Dr. Lubungu.
Thank you so much, Krista. I hope you are able to get me clearly.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, my network is unstable, so I may not be able to switch on the video for the purpose of clear transmission. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. Please go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you so much. My appreciation with my team goes to ESSA and REAL for having given us an opportunity to undertake the research that we are doing. And in our presentation, on behalf of my colleagues, we are looking at the language of instruction in early grades, that is grades 1 to 3, in a multilingual context. In this case, we are looking at the Zambian context. My presentation will look at the context and the rationale, and we'll also look at what the policy says in that sense, and also look at the policy versus practice in Zambia, and then we'll look at addressing the multilingualism key implementation challenges as espoused in some of the studies that we have looked at, and the critical transition problem that is there, since our focus is on transition from mother tongue to English at grade 4 regarding our study. Then we'll look at the research gap that we are trying to bridge in our study, and perhaps provide how the policy is being addressed through this research that we are going to conduct. In terms of the context and the rationale, one thing that we need to bear in mind is Zambia, like Ghana, is a multilingual nation with over 70 indigenous linguistic languages spoken across the nation. And these languages, and the government recognizes the fact that these languages do exist, but what the government has done is to select only 7 official languages. And these are the languages, perhaps when you look at from independence, that have been there as official regional languages for use in early education.
Dr. Lubungu, can you hear me? Okay, if we can give him a minute or so to reconnect. Thank you. Dr. Lupungu, can you hear us? Okay, I'll just give him another minute or so, and then this is the last presentation, and then we're moving into reflections and the Q&A session. So if he's unable to join shortly, we can move to that. Thank you.
Sorry about that. My network is challenging where I am. Sorry, I hope you're able to get me now.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, so I was talking about the government has chosen to use only 7 languages as official languages. These are mother tongue languages from the 10 provinces of the Republic. Now, the urgency of change is that despite this linguistic richness, learning poverty still continues to stand at staggering 98.5%, I think, according to the UN, UNESCO, I mean. This crisis underscores why language policy is central to achieving foundational learning and numerous literacy. So evidence base is that research demonstrates that early learning is familiar. When you learn in familiar language, it improves comprehension among the learners. It also improves retention and overall academic achievement, according to World Bank 2020. Oh, what is happening?
You have another device that's joined in on the call.
No.
Maybe
Okay.
devices. Yeah,
Okay.
please go ahead.
Yeah, what's happening?
Or if somebody else's mic is on, please mute yourself.
Let me exit and join.
Okay. Apologies, everybody. Please, let's just give him a few seconds to rejoin, and hopefully the call quality is better.
Okay, are you able to get me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of what the policy says, when you look at the different policies that the Zambian government has done, from 1964, we've had a number of policies. And we had a policy on primary literacy program, which was called PLP framework. And this one was looking at grades 1 to 4 mandate that local languages should be used as a medium of instruction, with English introduced as a single subject other than the vehicle for teaching the content. Okay, so when you look at the Ministry of Education, you get me?
Yes. We have just about 12 minutes left.
Oh, sorry. So I'll rush through because of my network, which is very unstable.
Yes.
Now we have the policy shift, area transition to English as a medium of instruction has accelerated from grade 5 to 4 at some point. And again, we went back to transition from grade 3 to grade 4, which we are actually looking at. So now when you look at this, the policy actually is aiming at to ground literacy development in familiar languages before one transitions to English. That was the whole idea. Theoretically, you improve comprehension and everything else. But the question is, does this actually help? You can move to the next slide, perhaps. Now, what does the policy, when you look at the policy as a practice in Zambia, the intent of the policy is that mother tongue instruction improves literacy acquisition, and it builds strong foundational skills and respects linguistic diversity in education. That is the intent of the policy. But what is the classroom reality? According to the studies that have been done, is that there is a lot of code switching which dominates in the classroom, in the actual classroom. There's also teachers systematically mix English with local languages. That is what is coming out in the studies that we looked at, and severe shortage of instructional materials in local languages. And this one actually came out in our pilot study that we did in our project, that shortage of instructional materials in local languages is very, very critical at that particular stage, at the transitional period. And also limited teacher training for bilingual pedagogy is one aspect that comes out from the studies that have been done. So the gap between policy and practice stems largely from resource constraints, inadequate training, systemic pressure, and many other aspects. We can move to the next slide, please. Now, addressing multilingualism, when you look at the Zambian situation, the policy approach to diversity is that you use regional lingua franca, which I mentioned. You talk about Bemba, Nyanja, Tonga, Lozi, and Kikaondi, as a way of addressing multilingualism from the Zambian perspective, and also standardization of orthographies for written materials. That is how they're addressing multilingualism, and teacher training guidelines for multilingual classroom.
Dr. Lubungu, can you hear me?
Often exceeds policy categories and the designated medium of instruction. That is a very underlying issue, where when they come to the class, there is a mismatch in terms of medium of instruction. We can move to the next one. That is one of the sources. Now, the key implementation challenges that there are pedagogical challenges, structural challenges, as well as social cultural challenges. In terms of pedagogical challenges, there's limited teacher proficiency in both languages, like the language that is introduced at that level. For instance, in Central Province, they speak Lenje, but you introduce Bemba for them to be able to use as a medium of instruction. So it becomes a pedagogical challenge in that particular sense, and the absence of clear transition strategies, inadequate training in bilingual pedagogy, lack of assessment tools for multilingualism. What about the structural aspect? You have severe shortages of teaching materials. Overcrowding in classrooms is quite evident, especially now when we have the free education policy in Zambia, which has been which was enacted last year. We have a lot of students in classrooms. Overcrowding is one of them. Insufficient time allocation for language learning, that particular language which they are supposed to use as a medium of instruction. There is not enough time, and limited technical support and resources. From the cultural perspective, you're looking at English. They look at English as one of the languages that is perceived to be a language of success and opportunity. And so most people would want to use that language. And societal resistance to local language instruction, also parental pressure for early English exposure, stigma associated with mother tongue education. This is one of those social cultural challenges that are coming out in these studies that we consulted, like that of Mwansa and Kalinde. Now, the critical transition problem. What is the problem at transition point? We have abrupt linguistic shift, where learners abruptly shift to another language from the language that they have been using. And this is also seen in one of the books that you just published recently, which is titled The Missing Link. In that book, it brings out this particular aspect as well. Sudden transition from familiar language to English medium of instruction becomes a critical challenge. And when you look at the cognitive overload also, learners must simultaneously decode language and learn new language at the same time. They are trying to understand the language and they're also learning the content. So that becomes a cognitive overload to the learners. And the weak foundation is one of the critical transition problem. Inadequate English literacy foundation before transition is one of the challenges that is there. And emotional barriers, reduced participation and confidence in learning. Learners who have reduced confidence because they are not familiar with that particular language, they are not very good in that particular language. So you find that becoming a transitional challenge or problem. The next slide, please. Now the research gap. When you look at our study, what we know, what really do we know is that existing studies primarily focus on policy outcomes, national assessments, and macro level evaluations of literacy programs. When you look at what classroom realities, we're looking at how teachers actually navigate multilingual instruction in the resource-constrained writings, okay? Also, we're looking at learner experiences, how children actually experience language transitions and cope with linguistic challenges that they are exposed to. And also teacher strategies. What strategies are the teachers using, coping mechanisms to be able to address this particular aspect? So you will realize that the missing link here is there's limited ethnographic evidence on classroom realities, learner experiences, and teacher coping strategies in multilingual context. And this is where our study comes in, okay? Because our study is an ethnographic study of the social, cultural, and pedagogical challenges in transitioning at grade 12, grade 4, from the mother tongue to English. And when you look at that, you realize that our study is purely a qualitative approach, okay, that we are doing. And then we are looking at we are going to do classroom observations, okay. We also look at the interviews with the head teachers and the teachers that are involved in teaching grade 4, especially at that grade where they're transitioning to find out the challenges that they are, the pedagogical challenges, social and cultural. And we also have focus group discussions with the learners themselves for them to share their experiences and participation during the learning process. And we also look at the documents, okay? You have to review policy documents, curriculum materials, and assessment tools that they are using to be able to see the challenges that they are having in terms of transitioning from mother tongue to the English. You can move to the next slide, please. So in terms of addressing the policy through research, what are we trying to do? This study actually identifies pedagogical challenges, okay? It documents specific classroom difficulties in implementing multilingual instruction. It also captures learners' experiences, okay? In class, it also documents coping strategies that the teachers are using in a multilingual context. So we expect that it will actually propose or suggest evidence-based policy and practice implementation at that particular stage. Next, please. Okay, thank you so much for that. I think that is where my presentation ends. Sorry for the intermittent, communication of internet challenges. So I'm rushing through the presentation. Thank you very much.
That's all right, Dr. Lubungu. Thank you very much for your presentation. And thank you to our other speakers, Dr. Ainselya, Dr. Kigwilu, and Dr. So as well for your presentations. Even though you shared the context of 4 different countries, I think we can all agree that there were similar and common threads, findings, and themes throughout the different contexts. So thank you for that. I personally have learned a lot. I will hand over now to my colleagues, Dr. Tieno Diallo and Ms. Melinda Sapon, who will lead the session on reflections and Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. I think we all noted that from our 4 speakers that language matters when it comes to foundational learning skills. But which language are we talking about? Mother tongue, home language, local language, language of instruction, etc. So at this point, we are going to open the floor for you to reflect on the topics that have been shared, whether it's a brief comment or a deeper insight or question. The floor is now yours. Feel free to raise your hand or put your thoughts in the chat in both French and also English. And I think we already have some comments and also questions in the chat. The floor is now yours, please.
Okay, since people are preparing to share their thoughts on the presentations, I will begin by thanking the presenters for this insightful presentations. In fact, I have also learned a lot. And as Krista mentioned, even though we are looking at different contexts, there were a lot of cross-cutting issues. For instance, I learned that there is a lot of divide between policy and practice, a lot of misalignment in almost all the 4 countries that were presented. And then also I have learned that a key challenge to implementing these language of instruction policies in the classroom is all about teacher training and deployment, as well as the availability of resources for all of these to come into practice. And then the interesting thing I have also learned is the resistance from parents and communities on the use of mother tongue in the classroom. It's interesting how some parents think the use of English or French in the early stages is an indication that their children are going to succeed. It's very interesting, and that's one key thing I've also learned from these. Please, if there is any other reflections, the floor is open. I see some in the chats. Thank you. Any more?
Melinda, there are
raise
a
your
few
hand.
hands. I can grab a few hands raised.
Oh, okay. How come I'm not seeing them?
There's Rose Opio, and I can't see the other names. So maybe Rose
Okay,
can.
then Rose, please go for it. Thank you, Krista.
Okay, thank you so much. Wonderful colleagues for sharing. I hope you're getting me clearly. Yeah, so
Yes.
I really share your thoughts about this research area in terms of language, which is very complicated, especially the multilingualism context in Africa. And I just wanted to understand one thing. We keep actually mentioning that multilingualism is a good idea. It's a great idea in terms of children understanding concept and even to go to the next level in the language of instructions in the upper primary. And then we also mentioned about a lot of code switching that the teacher uses strategies to make sure the kids understand concepts. In my understanding, if we think about multilingualism as a good idea, code switching should be also a good idea. And I still wonder really, because national assessments for African children really is still low, yet these kind of practices of code switching and multilingualism in the same context, I'm very clear in my mind that even the people who are teaching in upper primary schools in Kenyan context, they still use different languages to make kids understand. But the same thing happens every time, and the kids don't understand. So when we go to national assessment, we still perform very poorly. Do we want to really argue that multilingualism is a good aspect, a bad aspect for African children? Because I was thinking, if we have 70 languages in Zambia, Kenya, we have a lot again. In all contexts, we have a lot. Our kids should be actually faring on well in terms of understanding the concepts. So I still get to get confused when we say multilingualism is a good idea, but in Africa, it's not.
Okay, thank you, Rose. Do we have any reactions from the presenters?
Can I come in?
Yes, please do.
Thank you so much. Indeed, the issue of multilingualism is a complex issue. It's indeed a complex issue because when you look at some studies that have been done, they are pointing to the fact that a learner understands well when they learn in their mother tongue, their mother language. And once they have gotten certain concepts in their mother tongue, it becomes easy for them to get concepts in English. But the reality on the ground speaks otherwise, because you realize that, for instance, right now in Zambia, 2023, there's another policy shift where they are saying no more teaching in mother tongue from grade 1. Now it will be English from grade 1 throughout. You see, you can see all these aspects. But when you get in the classroom, you realize that the teachers tend to code switch, tend to use also mother within the one lesson. Why? Because the learners are coming from different backgrounds, a multilingual background where they are learning different their mother tongue at home. But when they get into school, what happens is that the teacher now is forced to code switch to make learners understand some of the concepts. And this is also echoed in some of the publications that have been done, the recent publications, where when you look at this linguistic transition, it creates actually a learning gap in the learners, where learners may struggle not because they lack the ability to understand the content, but because they are unable to comprehend the language in which it is actually delivered. So that is where the challenge is. So really your concern that multilingualism is a complex issue and you are getting confused, what really should be done on the ground? These are the issues that we need to look at. But one thing again that we should bear in mind is that the strategies like code switching the teachers are using, they are not captured in the policy. The policy does not talk about the issue of code switching. So it's like
Okay, I think we lost
it's
Dr.
their own.
Okay,
Please, can I? Oh, okay. Yes, sir. I wanted to
Dr.
come.
Bungu. I see Papa Alion's hand up. So Papa Alion, please take it, and then Weja can react to the concern. And then we listen to the others who have their hands raised.
Voilà, merci beaucoup. Je voulais juste rebondir sur la contribution de M. Gassama dans le chat qui parle des programmes lecture pour tous et relis. Hein. Je crois que il a donné un avis extrêmement important parce qu'il dit dans sa contribution que Ces deux programmes-là, Relis et Lecture pour tous, qu'on appelle communément LPT, ont contribué à la production de matériel pour les enfants, les enseignants, enfin les élèves, les enseignants, mais également que les communautés ont été déjà sensibilisées sur l'importance des langues nationales. Donc, ça, c'est un peu dans la continuité de ce que j'avais dit concernant ces deux aspects-là. Effectivement, je crois que c'est des aspects sur lesquels je ne me suis pas étalé, tout simplement. Mais il faut le dire, hein, avant la mise en branle du modèle harmonisé d'enseignement bilingue, je vois que le programme RELI, qu'on appelle communément renforcement de la lecture initiale pour tous, a déjà été déroulé, hein, bien avant, et ça a connu une mise en œuvre quand même dans 9 académies. Et 8 langues nationales avaient été concernées par ce programme-là. Et je crois que c'est une évidence. Mais si ce programme-là avait peut-être connu, ou en tout cas avait donné des raisons de croire au déploiement harmonieux de ce bilinguisme-là, peut-être que ça n'aurait peut-être pas connu, on n'aurait pas peut-être eu à faire appel à ce modèle harmonisé d'enseignement bilingue. Donc, c'est pour dire que c'est une évidence. Il y a eu pas mal, comme je l'ai dit, pas mal de tentatives, hein, qui ont été faites, mais il faut le dire, cela reste quand même encore insuffisant. Et nous sommes sur le terrain en ce moment, nous sommes en train de mener des recherches dans ce domaine. Et nous ne faisons que relayer, malheureusement ou heureusement, ce que les praticiens sur le terrain nous laissent entrevoir. Il y a pour l'aspect maintenant, sensibilisation des communautés également. Bon, si c'est un praticien qui le dit, il n'y a pas de souci. C'est tout ce qu'on souhaite, hein. Je crois que les communautés aussi sont partie prenante de ce programme-là. Et si la sensibilisation a atteint un niveau très important, je crois que on ne peut que s'en féliciter, même si on est conscient que les communautés ne vont pas peut-être adhérer à 100% à ce projet-là, qui est nouveau et qu'ils ne comprennent peut-être pas forcément. Voilà, donc ça, c'était juste dans la continuité de l'intervention de M. Gassama, dont je salue vraiment la pertinence des propos. Voilà, merci.
Thank you, Papa Alion. That was really thoughtful. Thank you for your reactions. I see Samson's hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, Kirsty. Listening to the presentations, I'm taking these few things away. That I think the sub-Saharan African countries are operating in a dilemma about this multilingualism. And my confusion is that over the years, we look at the language policy, I think from 1920 to this time, which is very checkered. During the Gordgesbeck era, there was a stable language policy on the use of mother tongue at the early grade, as the first presenter did. But from self-rule up to now, it is checkered. We are not stable on one language policy until from somewhere 2004 now, but even that one with some conditions. The issue is this. We see a decline in the literacy proficiency of our school children, both in the Ghanaian languages and the English language. And foundational literacy intervention programs usually come to this country, Ghana, and the implementation is targeted at the mother language. During the implementation of these programs, we will see a rise in the literacy proficiency of our children. But once the initial project implementation year elapses, then we go back to using the English to teach literacy at the foundational levels. And the confusion level is too high. You go to the colleges of education where teachers are trained. We don't have courses that focus on literacy pedagogy, whereby these pre-service teachers will be trained for how to teach literacy, reading, in the basic schools before they graduate. So they go posted and they cannot function properly. So I think the whole thing is about decolonizing our minds, where we still have people who see somebody speaking English language as having knowledge, but cannot function in the society. And so teachers cannot function properly in the classrooms in terms of literacy development. Can we, as a country, through our policies, government, become so intentional on foundational learning, hence foundational literacy and numeracy, because these are the pivot that drives foundational learning in the classroom. This is what I can share with us now. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your reflection, Samson. I see a question in the chat before we move on to the others who have their hands raised.
I wanted to react to the first concern, but I don't know whether I'll be given the opportunity.
Okay, let me read out the question. Maybe that would also help us get more understanding, and maybe you'll come in. Roja, is that fine? Okay.
That's
So
fine.
Sue is thanking all for the presentations, and she's saying that SDG 4 calls for ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education. She'd like to know if any of the researchers have given consideration to young children with hearing impairments or who are deaf and for whom their first language is sign language. As the first speaker emphasized, language matters for foundational learning success, and this is the case for all children. So the first speaker being Roja, maybe you can react to this. Did you consider sign language as the first language for these learners with hearing impairments? Thank you. Over to you, Roja.
Okay. Thank you, Melina, and thank you for the concern raised. Okay, so before I really delve into it, I just wanted to react quickly to the first concern, which has to do with the complex nature of this issue about multilingualism. Yes, I really agree. And what that means is that it really demands commitment on the part of all stakeholders. It is so complex that sometimes the policies fail, from my view, fail because all stakeholders are not on the same path. I said that myself conducted in 2021 on the medium of instruction in Ghana. I won't say surprisingly, parents themselves prefer that English be taught to their children right from day one in the school environment, because they associate their ability to speak in English language to intelligence, to enhancing their chances of progressing. And so it's really complex that the policies come, but the failure is due to a number of factors which are complex. And so I would say that, yes, we need to really bring all on board, stakeholders on board, because as we all agree, the mother tongue is very key. And if you don't bring all stakeholders on board to really support, any policy that is implemented will definitely fail. And so that is what I really want to add. In terms of the sign language, in our research, not really, because we are using the EGRA, assessment tool, and because we are looking at reading specifically, we're interested in the issue of the sound, word recognition, fluency, and comprehension. And so I don't know whether if the others focus specifically on that, but in our case, we're looking at it in terms of using the EGRA assessment tool. But I think it's really a good concern that we can really look into. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
Thank you, Roja. Okay, Peter, please go for it.
Just two short ones. One, regarding sign language as a first language, in my case, we didn't consider it. It was not within our scope. One, because of the issues around resources and logistics, and we felt that for a start, we would put it aside, but it is an area that is interesting and is worth considering. Then on the issue of code switching, I do agree with what the other speakers have said about it, but I just wanted to add that research shows that code switching is normally used as a scaffolding tool. When the instructor now wants to explain something to be understood better, then he or she feels that I now switch on to the first language of the learners. I also would want to appreciate a suggestion from one of the participants that perhaps we need to think on how best we can code switch, and has suggested the issue around the sandwiching, where if you begin first with the second language, then code switch to the first language, ensure you get back again to the second language. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Jai, your hand is up before we read the other questions.
Thank you so much. Let me ride on the previous speaker on the issue of code switching. Studies again have shown that it's not just code switching that the teachers are using. There's also what we call translanguaging. So you see all those terminologies coming in. And when you look at the aspect of the policy itself, indeed, we have a mismatch. What happens on the ground and what happens at the policy level. This actually indicates that perhaps there is no co-creation of the policy that is deliberately done by the policymakers. What I mean by co-creation is that when you are creating the policy, let the communities be involved in the policy creation so that you agree on certain things that should move into that particular policy. And like what is happening now, it seems the policymakers, they are on their own, as one has indicated that the stakeholders do not seem to be at the same pace. They are operating at different wavelengths. And therefore, you have this problem that will continue actually raising its head. Otherwise, I think those are some of the issues that we find on the ground. Thank you.
Okay.
And sorry, on the sign language, we didn't take into account this because our focus, particular schools of course, they are public schools. But if I see this as a very good research topic for future researchers, that will focus on special schools. We have what we call special schools. That is where you find sign language being used in those special schools. Okay, some schools have special units where you have these children with disabilities and so on and so forth. So those perhaps if we could look at that particular aspect, it would actually give us a different finding. But currently in Zambia, the new policy education curriculum framework 2023, it has actually recognized sign language as one of them. So perhaps in the future, we should be able to look at that particular angle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw some other hands up. Do we still have Mbaru Gasama?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, please speak.
Hello, good afternoon for me. I just would like to congratulate all the presenters. My name is Dr. Maro Gassama from Pathfinder Foundation in Senegal. And listening to all the presentations, my takeaway is that the challenges are almost the same across all those countries. We have seen code switching, we have heard insufficient teacher training material, lack of teacher training in local languages, teachers who do not master the local languages, cultural challenges, etc. So my takeaway is that almost they are the same. And I think that it needs to be addressed by public policies, how our states, our government are involved into this FLN. So it's a question, how they are involved. I think that we need to do more research and they need to be more informed about what is going on the field. And also listening to the presentation from Uganda and from Ghana, my question is how school languages are selected. Because from Ghana, I heard that some students in the classroom were not able to heard the language that was selected. So how language was selected. In Uganda, we see that they have 70 local languages, but only 7 were taught in school. How the languages are selected for schools.
Okay,
That
thank
was
you,
my
Barry.
question and my comments.
Doctor,
Okay,
please,
thank you very much.
do you mean Zambia? Because we don't have Uganda.
Zambia, sorry.
Okay, great.
Okay, so whilst the Zambian and Ghanaian presenters are waiting to respond to that, we receive another question from Martin so that they are all responded to at once. Martin Kanyagui, if your hand is still up.
I think we can skip to Simon.
Okay, Simon then. Please be brief. Our time is running out so that they are all addressed at once.
Okay, thank you. My name is Simon Awintuma Ndewe. I work with Saber Education in. Mine is not a question, but a reflection of all the presentations so far. Listening to all the presenters, I think what I have taken out of it is that as a continent and as a people, it appears we really don't know what we want. And this is why I say so. We start with mother language from grade 1 to 3 or 4 and switch to English. The question is, what do we do, or what is the purpose for introducing the mother language at the early grade? Is it to help the students to understand instructions or pick instructions? What happened in the long term? Then midway, you introduce English system for all of them to start all over. So because we don't know what we want, you see some disconnect between policy and practice. And again, if you come out our streets, the workplace, banking halls, shopping malls, what are the inscriptions? Written notice? Is it written in our mother language? Is it written in English? These are questions we need to answer so that it will reflect in policy. If we are going to adopt a particular mother language that will become a lingua franca for the nation, that will work for us. For instance, if we look at Germany, Russia, China, these are multilingual countries, but they have been able to adopt 1 or 2 of the indigenous languages, develop pedagogy, and has become a lingua franca for the countries. But in our case, we adopt mother language midway, we throw it away and goes back to English. So it kind of creates some confusion in the system. So for me, we really need to know what we want. Otherwise, you will see the reason why some parents are interested in their kids learning English than the mother language, because to what end is the question. To what end? So that is just a bit of reflection I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you for your reflection, Simon. Papa Alion, would you like to react to the reflection and earlier question? Papa Alion. Otherwise, move on to the next person with their hand
Voilà,
up.
merci beaucoup.
Okay.
J'ai vu juste une question qui a été posée par un spectateur anonyme dans le chat. Donc, la question, c'était de savoir, j'ai essayé d'y répondre, hein, je ne sais pas trop comment ça fonctionne. C'est qu'on m'a interpellé pour me demander les indicateurs qui permettent d'évaluer l'efficacité de l'utilisation des langues nationales. Bon, pour ce qui est des indicateurs, hein, je crois que c'est assez partagé. Il y a peut-être trois niveaux d'indicateurs. Le premier est au niveau institutionnel, puisque l'État est l'instigateur premier, ou en tout cas est l'initiateur de ce programme de formation, de ce programme d'enseignement. Il serait quand même judicieux qu'on vérifie, ou en tout cas qu'on soit sûr que le taux de formation continue et initiale des enseignants est quand même assez intéressant, ou en tout cas a atteint un seuil qui permet quand même de ratisser large. Donc, le premier indicateur est d'ordre institutionnel, on va dire. Le deuxième indicateur que je pourrais peut-être citer, c'est au niveau social, pour ne pas dire socioculturel. Quel impact cela a sur le taux de scolarisation? Ça, j'en ai parlé, je crois, dans le propos liminaire. Et est-ce que également cela contribue à nous éviter donc cette déperdition scolaire? Donc, je parle d'un taux de scolarisation relevé, hein, comme deuxième indicateur. Et le troisième, mais peut-être pas forcément le moins important, c'est au niveau du taux de réussite des élèves. Est-ce que comparativement à ce qui se faisait dans le système classique, est-ce que les indices ont été quand même assez révélateurs par rapport à ce qu'on avait l'habitude de voir? Donc ça, c'est au niveau pédagogique. Voilà les trois indicateurs au niveau institutionnel, au niveau socioculturel et au niveau pédagogique. Ce sont peut-être les trois indicateurs pour moi qui me paraissent assez importants. Merci.
Thank you, Papa Alion, for that. So there's a question in here from Foster Billa, and he's asking, how do these policies address the needs of migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees? Do you have any reaction from the presenters on that? How do these language policies address the needs of migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees?
I can chime in.
Okay, please do, Peter.
Yeah, I think that is a gray area. Very little is happening. If I were to give the case of Kenya, the refugees, when they come in, the nearest to the non-English language we expose them to is Kiswahili, which is, again, not a native language, is an acquired language. We rarely zero into their mother tongue as a medium of instruction. So it is a gray area that may need a further rethinking.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. If I can just react quickly
Okay, Roger, please do.
Yeah, there was an earlier question regarding how the languages of instructions or languages of school are selected. In the context of Ghana, it is usually the dominant language of the community in which the school is located. So you can have, as I said, an ethnic group, they may have 2 or 3 languages or 4, but it is the dominant language that is the language that is often selected and taught in school. And again, this has its own repercussions, where people are now conflict fighting from here and there, which language should be the dominant language. But usually, in the case of Ghana, it is the dominant language of the community in which it is. So yes, as I agree with my colleague who just spoke, is considering that even at the moment, in our own context, our own languages of instruction, we are battling with even how to address the issue of incorporating that into our school language. When it comes to migrants and asylum seekers, it is actually a challenge. However, what happens in the context of Ghana is that, in fact, we have a number of migrants in Ghana. When they come, some of them are able to settle in some of these communities. And I can tell you that in Ghana, we have evidence that some of them, especially from the northern part of Africa, who have come to settle in some communities, they are able to immerse yourself into the language and they also benefit. So I think if we're able to promote the mother tongue with time, as they come and settle, they also benefit. Whilst we think that in the long term, we see how best we can also make provision for them. Because as we all know, we are living in a global village, and therefore, whatever we find ourselves, we should feel welcomed, and we can also go about our learning and other activities. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Roger. We have barely 3 minutes to end this session, and I see 2 other hands up. So if you can please be brief. The floor is open to you, Florence.
Okay.
Please
Thank
be
you.
brief.
Thank
We
you.
have limited time. Thank you.
I am Florence from Kisii University, Kenya. In our presenter from Kenya dealt with 2 languages being used in school, and that is true according to the policy. And even when they started, when they made the mother tongue to be a policy in Kenya, I think it has not been implemented in Kenya. So far, most of the schools are still using Kiswahili and English. And the Kiswahili that is being used is still having a problem because most of it is Sheng. It is not pure Kiswahili. And therefore, as we continue, I don't know how we can now impress, because they could switch to Kiswahili, which is not again pure Kiswahili. From English, they could switch to Kiswahili, mostly in towns. But when you go to rural areas where they would have even could switch to the local language, they still could switch to Kiswahili, and they even teach the children Kiswahili at home. And this Kiswahili is not pure Kiswahili. And again, there is this interference of the Sheng, which has even been impressed even at the radio stations, whereby the children will think that this is the right language, and kumbe it is not the right language. I'm sorry, I'm also code switching. And it is not the right language. So I don't know from our presenter, what shall we do? I think that is still a gray area. Where it is supposed to be addressed, the Sheng and the Kiswahili, which is not pure, and it is being taught by the people. And you'll realize that most of the people who live in towns embrace English, and even they teach their children English. Though it might not be pure English, they also teach them. So there is that controversy between Sheng Kiswahili and pure Kiswahili. Thank you. What can we do as our presenter from Kenya? Thank you.
Thank you, Florence, and thank you all for your comments, your questions. I think we are running out of time, and apologize for those who are not able to speak. Let us move on quickly to the next session. So I will hand it over to my colleague, Krista. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tiana, and thank you, everybody, for your contribution so far. We'll have the closing remarks now by Mr. Badarasa.
Thank you, Krista. Thank you, everyone. It's my pleasure to proceed with closing remarks. And after listening to such an interesting discussion, one of the key takeaways I have from this conversation is that what happens in the classroom is important. It all boils down to what is happening in the classroom, what students are learning, what teachers are teaching, and which language they're using. So it is important for us to really grasp that, to understand what's happening in the actual classroom, to be able to inform policymakers so that they develop language policy that are relevant, effective, and inclusive. So we're very thankful to have these different research activities in the field, because I do believe that they are really here filling a gap. They will help us, inform the missing links, right? Know the missing links, like Professor from Zambia was saying, so that we help our policymakers, our ministry counterpart, to adopt policies that are effective. And of course, I won't come back to the benefit of using mother tongue in classrooms or L1, because to me, the debate is not ideological. It is not to promote, our languages or identity, at least here in Senegal, because I'm based in Senegal. Here, the issue is pedagogical. It is not ideological, but it is pedagogical, because we know, as you all said, the language mismatch is happening in early grades. Students are coming to the classroom, with their local languages, so they don't speak French, they don't speak English in other areas. So that mismatch is a real problem and it hinders learning outcomes. So when students use a language, learn in a language they understand, that they speak, so we saw the benefits. I've been at from another working environment where I helped implement, early grade reading activities at scale. And we saw initial results just after 1 or 2 months of implementation. You would see how students were really at ease, the energy in the classroom and the interactions were excellent. So I think advocating for using our mother tongues, our local languages in classroom is based on evidence. At the same time, it comes along with challenges, and the challenges were mentioned by many of us. We saw the transition issue, which is important, like how you move from L1 to L2, like from mother tongue to the official language, how you deal with overcrowded classroom size, teacher training. Initial training and in-service training are also key. And I was also glad to hear from the chat, to see from the chat a lot of suggestions, a lot of lessons, like using scripted lessons. Of course, in early grades, if you give the teacher a guide, a reading a guide, or you give him lots of prescriptions on how to go about it, how to teach, that could be enough, even if the teacher does not master the language he is teaching. At some level, it can work, but if you move higher, if you go to the upper levels, it becomes a problem, because there you need more interaction, more communication on teaching, on the text and all that. So it is something that we really need to think about, to come up with solutions that are really workable, because I think the future of our education is really go with our local languages. This is proven. All developed nations have used their local languages, to make progress. So why not Africa? At the same time, those challenges are here ahead of us, and thanks to initiatives like that, where we are able to fund, university experts for them to go and dig into the field. Those are very interesting elements we need for us to be able to close the gap. So with that, I'm going to stop here and thank you all for attending this event, and please look forward to other webinars, because we do have other interesting topics in store. I don't want to reveal it here, but please stay tuned. And thank you very much. Back to you, the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Badara, and thank you everybody for joining. As Badara said, we will be sharing with you in the course of the next few weeks, the next few webinars we have planned. So please keep an eye out on your emails, and we will see you again soon. We'll also be sharing the recording and the slides from today's session, so please expect us in the next few days. Thank you everybody for your time, and see you in the next webinar.
We have